Dark chosen ones, your deepest pain holds these spiritual gifts. We begin in the darkness, not the kind that comes when the sun sets, but the kind that settles quietly in the soul. The kind of darkness that creeps in during your loneliest nights, when the silence is louder than the world ever was, and your heartbeat feels like the only proof that you're still here. You know this place. Maybe you're in it now, or maybe you've been there before, and you carry its shadows like scars under your skin. But what if I told you that this darkness is not a curse, but a calling? What if you are not broken, but chosen? You who have felt abandoned by life, you who have screamed at the stars and received only silence, you who have walked through fire and emerged with trembling hands and a heart that beats like a war drum, you are the dark chosen one. Not because you wished it, no one chooses this path willingly, but because your soul was forged in the crucible of pain for something far greater than survival. You were made to awaken.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
There is a paradox here that most people never understand. The pain that nearly destroyed you was not the end of your path, it was the beginning. The pain was the initiation. It stripped away the illusions, the masks, the comforts that kept you numb. It forced you to confront yourself. Not the self you show to the world, but the self that cries when no one is watching. The self that longs to be seen, to be understood, to find meaning in suffering. And that's where your power begins. Not in your strength, not in your success, but in your wounds. Your deepest pain holds a spiritual gift. Let that sink in. What if the very thing you've been running from is the key to unlocking your purpose? What if the trauma, the heartbreak, the loss, what if all of it was sacred? Most people avoid pain. They distract themselves, numb themselves, lie to themselves. But the dark chosen ones, the ones like you, don't have that luxury. You were dragged into the abyss. You were left with nothing but your breath and your will. And in that emptiness, something ancient began to stir. A voice that is not of this world. A whisper so quiet it can only be heard in silence. There is more to you. So much more. When I say chosen, I don't mean superior, I mean responsible. You are responsible for transmuting your pain into light. You are responsible for taking the ashes of your past and crafting a flame that guides others. You are responsible for becoming the healer, the alchemist, the awakened one. Not because it's easy, but because your soul demanded it. There is a reason you couldn't stay asleep like the rest of the world. There is a reason your suffering was so specific, so personal, so devastating. It was tailored for your awakening. Let me ask you something that may shake you. What if the very worst thing that ever happened to you wasn't punishment, but preparation? What if the universe, God, Source, whatever name you use, was not cruel, but precise? What if your soul chose this incarnation, this hardship, because it knew that only through fire would you remember who you truly are? The world doesn't need more perfection, it needs more truth. And your truth, raw, messy, painful, is exactly what someone else needs to hear to heal. But before you can share it, you must embrace it. You must stop running. You must face the darkness not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Sit with your pain. Listen to it. What has it been trying to show you? What parts of you were born in the chaos? What strengths do you now possess because of the very things you thought would destroy you? This is the path of the dark chosen one. It is not glamorous. It is not easy. There are no shortcuts here. But there is something real, something eternal waiting for you on the other side of your despair. And every moment you choose to keep going, even when your legs shake and your heart breaks, you are saying to the universe, I accept the calling. This is not just about you. And that's the hardest part to accept. Your pain is not just yours. It is collective. It is ancestral. It is spiritual. You carry the weight of generations within you. And when you heal, you don't just heal yourself. You heal the lineage. You heal the future. You become a living bridge between worlds, between timelines, between realities. But to do that, you must go deeper, deeper than the surface stories, deeper than the victim narrative. You must ask, what is this pain here to teach me? Not from a place of blame, but from a place of sacred curiosity. You must become an archaeologist of your soul, digging through the ruins of your past to uncover the ancient wisdom buried beneath the trauma. And when you do, you will find it, the gift, the power, the knowing. It doesn't come all at once. It comes in fragments, symbols in dreams, sudden clarities, synchronicities that defy logic. At first, you may dismiss them, but over time you'll begin to see the pattern. The pain was the portal, the wound was the womb, and you, my friend, are being reborn. The world will try to pull you back. It will offer you comfort, distraction, validation, but that's not your path. You are here to walk between worlds, to bring light to the darkest places, to speak truth in a world built on lies. And to do that, you must stay awake. You must stay grounded. You must stay true to the knowing that burns inside you, even when no one else understands. You were not meant to fit in. You were meant to disrupt, to dismantle, to rebuild. And that begins with your own life. Everything you've lost was clearing space for something sacred. Every breakdown was a breakthrough in disguise, and every tear you've cried watered the seeds of your awakening. So I ask you now, what if your pain was never a mistake? What if it was the map? And are you willing to follow it, even into the unknown, the gift hidden beneath the ashes of your pain? There comes a moment on this path, this strange, sacred path of the dark chosen ones, where you realize something terrifying and liberating. You will never be the same person you once were. That version of you, the one who clung to comfort, to control, to identity, it had to die, and it did. Maybe slowly, through years of silent suffering, or maybe all at once, like lightning striking your soul, but it happened. And what remained was a shell, cracked and trembling, unsure of what comes next. But that emptiness, that void, is not death. It is the sacred space where rebirth begins. We are taught to fear the void, to run from it, to fill it with noise, distractions, habits, relationships that keep us from hearing our own heartbeat. But the dark chosen ones, we learn to sit in the void. We learn to be still in the nothingness, because we know that's where the voice of the divine speaks, not in the chaos, not in the crowd, but in the silence after everything shatters. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the purifier. It is the sacred fire that burns away everything that is not truly you. It exposes the false idols you once worshipped. Status, validation, the illusion of control. It shows you what was never real. And in doing so, it leaves space for what is real, what has always been real. Your essence, your soul, the part of you that was never touched by trauma, never broken by the world, that sacred center within you that remained untouched, even as everything else fell apart. Have you ever asked yourself why the pain was so specific? Why it struck where it did? Why it cut so deep? But awakening is not always graceful. It often looks like falling apart, like losing everything you thought you needed, like being stripped bare, emotionally naked in front of life itself. And yet, that's where you find your strength. Not the strength to fight or to control, but the strength to surrender, the strength to trust, the strength to say, even this pain has purpose. That is the first spiritual gift hidden in your deepest pain, clarity, the kind that doesn't come from books or gurus, but from lived experience, from scars earned in the battlefield of your soul. You begin to see through the illusions. You become immune to the games of the world. You stop chasing what the world told you would make you happy, and you start seeking what your soul has been whispering all along. Then comes the second gift, compassion. Real compassion. Not the kind that looks good on social media, but the kind that sees another person's pain and says, I know. I've been there. Not from pity, but from deep resonance. You begin to realize that we are all broken in the same places. We all carry wounds we don't speak of, and your pain gives you the eyes to see others more clearly. It softens you, it opens you, it makes you a healer, not because you have all the answers, but because you're willing to sit with someone in their darkness without needing to fix them. And then perhaps the most powerful gift of all, alchemical power, the ability to transmute, to turn wounds into wisdom, to turn pain into purpose, to take everything that tried to kill you and use it as fuel to light your path forward. This is not metaphor, this is spiritual physics. When you stop resisting your pain and start honoring it, it begins to transform. It becomes a source of energy, a sacred fire, a creative force. And it's from this place that you begin to create, not from ego, but from soul. But to access these gifts, you must pass through the threshold. You must stop identifying with the pain. You are not your trauma. You are not your past. You are not the story the world wrote for you. You are the author now. You are the one who gets to choose what meaning your pain will carry. That is your sovereign power, and no one can take it from you. Let me ask you something that may change how you see your entire life. What if your soul chose this exact pain because it carried the codes you needed to awaken? What if, before you were born, you knew that this life would break you and you chose it anyway because you knew what would be born from the breaking? Can you feel that? That truth that lives beneath your doubt? The knowing that you were made for more than survival, that you are not here to escape the darkness, but to become light within it? And so the journey continues. Not away from pain, but into its heart, because that's where your sacred gifts are hidden, beneath the ashes, beneath the silence, beneath the tears. This is not about becoming something new. This is about remembering what you already are, a soul forged in fire, a heart that refused to close, a light that kept flickering even in the storm. You are not weak for feeling deeply. You are not broken for being. Are you willing to give it the sacred fire that burns away who you're not? There is a moment in every spiritual journey when the fire no longer feels like punishment but purification, when the flames that once terrified you now feel like home. It doesn't happen suddenly, it's a slow, aching transformation. You begin to see that every painful experience was not random, it was a sacred invitation, a call from something ancient and eternal asking you to remember. to remember who you were before the world told you who to be, and to let the pain strip away everything that is not aligned with that truth. When you walk through that fire long enough, something begins to shift. You stop trying to be understood and start being understanding. You no longer beg the world to validate your pain, you validate it yourself. The longing to be seen by others fades because you've finally seen yourself, and not just the curated version, but the raw, messy, divine core that has always been worthy. That's the real you, not the wounded one, not the masked one, the one beneath it all, the witness, the consciousness, the soul. And when you meet that part of yourself, something powerful awakens. You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "What now?" That is the moment when your pain ceases to be a weight and becomes a weapon. Not a weapon to harm, but to heal, to cut through the lies, to slice through illusion. You begin to speak from a place of knowing so deep others feel it before they hear it. You become magnetic, not because you're trying, but because truth always is. But here's the paradox. The more you awaken, the lonelier it can feel. You start noticing how most of the world is still asleep, how people are trapped in cycles of avoidance, pretending, performing, and for a while that isolation can feel unbearable, but it's also sacred, because the silence you meet in that space is the same silence the sages found beneath the stars. It's the same stillness that the mystics touched in caves, deserts, monasteries. You are walking the same path. You are not alone. You are among the rare few who said yes to the unknown. That's when you start receiving visions, not always in the literal sense, but in your body, your intuition, your knowing. You begin to feel the future before it arrives. You sense what others can't say. You hear the truth beneath their words. Because your pain has sharpened your perception, it has made you sensitive, not weak. And in that sensitivity is your superpower. You become an oracle, not one who predicts, but one who reveals. You reveal what others are afraid to face. You mirror back the truth they've buried, and you do it not with judgment, but with love, because you've been there, and you remember how it felt. This is the sacred responsibility of the dark chosen ones, to hold the light in places where others have gone blind, to guide others through storms you've barely survived, to speak life into those who are drowning in the same silence you once called home. You don't need to be perfect to do this. You don't need to be healed completely. You just need to be honest and brave. Brave enough to be real in a world addicted to pretending. Let me ask you something that might change how you see yourself forever. What if your pain wasn't just a trial, but a transmission? What if your suffering encoded you with frequencies of wisdom that only you carry? And what if your presence, just your presence, is the medicine someone else is praying for? You see, the world is not healed by people who have no wounds. It is healed by people who have turned their wounds into wisdom. And you, through your darkness, have become a lighthouse. You don't need to shout. You don't need to convince. You just need to shine, quietly, steadily, relentlessly, because someone, somewhere, is watching you and saying, if they made it through that, maybe I can too. And just like that, your pain becomes prophecy, not the kind written in ancient books, but the kind written in blood, and that's the twist the world never saw coming, that your pain didn't destroy you, it initiated you. Becoming the oracle, your pain was the prophecy. Now you've arrived at the edge. the edge of who you were and who you are becoming. Everything up until this point, every scar, every sleepless night, every unanswered prayer has led you here. And maybe right now you still feel the weight of it all. Maybe the echoes of your past still whisper in your ears, trying to convince you that you're not ready, that you're not healed enough, not wise enough, not strong enough. But I need you to hear this. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be true. The world doesn't need another expert. It doesn't need another flawless face pretending to have it all figured out. What the world desperately needs, what it's starving for, is realness. Your story, your voice trembling but unwavering, your truth, even if it's still messy and unfinished. Because that's where the magic is. That's where the divine lives. Not in the polished, but in the present. In the courage to show up as you are, even if you're still healing. You see, all this time you thought you were breaking, but you were actually cracking open. The shell of who you thought you had to be was falling away, and underneath it, something ancient, something eternal was being revealed. Your soul, your light, the version of you that's not built on fear, but on knowing. And that knowing doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, you are enough, even now, especially now. You are not the pain you endured. You are not the darkness you walked through. Those were chapters, not your title. You are the one who kept going, the one who alchemized agony into empathy, the one who chose growth over bitterness, love over numbness, truth over comfort. That is your power, and no one can take it from you. So now the question becomes, what will you do with everything you've learned? Will you hide it away, afraid of being misunderstood? Or will you let it shine, knowing that your very presence might be the spark that lights someone else's way? You don't have to have all the answers, you just have to be willing. Willing to speak, willing to serve, willing to be seen. You are not here by accident. You are not hearing these words by chance. This is your remembering. This is your initiation into the next level of your becoming. The path of the dark chosen one is not about escaping the world. It's about returning to it, with wisdom in your bones, fire in your spirit, and love in your heart. It's about walking back into the very places that once broke you and becoming a source of healing there. Not because you're obligated, but because your soul can't help but give what it now holds. Let me leave you with one final question, one that only your soul can answer. If everything you've endured has shaped you into the exact person the world needs right now, are you brave enough to say yes to that calling? Because the truth is, you were never broken, you were becoming. Every shattered piece was a doorway, every wound a window, and now as you stand in your truth, a little more whole, a little more awake, the world shifts just by your existence. That is the power of a soul that has faced the dark and chosen to rise anyway. You are the prophecy fulfilled. You are the lived prayer. You are the light that came from the storm. And now, it's your time to shine.